Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Shit Loretta Knows. Today we are going to talk about what happens when your body turns against you in autoimmune disease, because that's exactly what it actually does. So for those of you who don't know, autoimmune disease is when your immune system starts recognizing your own body tissue as being foreign and starts mounting a response against it. And there was a population study done, I can't remember when, but recently, in the last couple of years, and they surveyed over 22 million people. They looked through 22 million case files, and they found that 1 in every 10 of those case files, those people are affected by an autoimmune condition. And that 80% of people who suffer from autoimmune disease are women. So this is not by coincidence. Another statistic is that if you've got one autoimmune disease, your chances of developing another one is 4 times greater than that of the general population. So these conditions don't occur in isolation. So there's a whole cluster of autoimmune disease. Now I want to tell you, I didn't qualify. I did actually. I've been in practice for almost 30 years. So I qualified in 1995, right, which is a long time ago. However, when I was a student, autoimmune disease was certainly known. Like systemic lupus erythematosus was one of the most common ones. But there were only a few, and now there are up to 40 of them. So shit's starting to get really real in the autoimmune disease department. So autoimmune diseases include some of the most common ones are chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, other neurodegenerative diseases like amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease. Thyroid disease, there are 2 versions. One is called Graves' disease. That's when your thyroid is attacked and it becomes overactive. And the other one is called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where the thyroid gland is attacked by your immune system and it becomes underactive. I think I've got those 2 the right way around. Inflammatory bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease are also autoimmune diseases. Rheumatoid arthritis, SLE, as I mentioned it, Sjogren's syndrome. The list goes on and on. Myasthenia gravis is another one. So some of these are more sort of rare, but a lot of them are actually quite common, especially the Hashimoto's thyroiditis and the Graves' disease. It's really, really common. So, what's the deal with autoimmune disease? Well, first of all, we need to understand that your immune system is active in your blood and in your lymphatics. So you've got your lymph nodes, and your lymph nodes make your white blood cells, and your white blood cells make up your immune system. So it's a part of your body that operates within your blood, and the white blood cells in your body represent the feminine aspect, and the red blood cells represent the masculine aspect. So you've got these feminine cells that are turning on the body. And if you remember, I said to you that 80% of people with autoimmune disease are women. So why would that be? Well, autoimmune disease, think about it this way. Your immune system is like your own personal defense force. And your personal defense force's job is to patrol the borders of your body and to recognize anything foreign and then to destroy that before those foreign objects cause some sort of harm to you. Now, when your defense force suddenly starts seeing every rattle in the bush as being a threat and starts destroying everything, very often what happens is it starts recognizing your own body tissue as the enemy and so starts destroying it. So in rheumatoid arthritis, the capsule around the joints are destroyed. In Hashimoto's thyroiditis and in Graves' disease, the thyroid gland cells are attacked. In multiple sclerosis, the myelin sheaths that surround the neurons start becoming sclerosed and they start becoming worn away, and then the nerves don't transmit the impulses, and that leads to the signs and symptoms of those diseases. Now, I plan to do a whole series on each one of these individual autoimmune diseases, not some of the hairy canaries, but the common ones, right? So I will go into more detail about what it means energetically and sort of unconsciously in terms of your beliefs and stuff when you get multiple sclerosis, which is different from when you, let's just say, get Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Okay, so I will talk about all of those individually, but today I'm just speaking about them in general. So Dr. Gabor Mate says what I have believed and known from Oriental medicine for decades is that suppressed emotions, especially anger and grief, are very much intrinsically linked to the development of autoimmune disease. So how does that actually work? Well, first of all, think about it. Women are socialized to care for others above themselves. Women are socialized. Girls are made out of sugar and spice and all things nice. And, boys are made out of frogs and snails and puppy dogs' tails. And so boys are allowed a lot of leeway. They allow a lot of freedom. Girls are the ones who become the nurturers. They become the caregivers. They become the ones who look after the other children in the family if they're the older siblings. And girls have to have socially, girls need to be a certain way. So we're not allowed to be wild. We're not allowed to be crass. We're not allowed to be loud. We're not allowed to speak badly. We're not allowed to be disrespectful. Now, this is actually for all children. I get that, right? But you've got to admit that the burden of needing to be good, all right, and having certain social stereotypes imposed on us is much stronger for girls than what it is for boys. And what happens there is that we get pissed off about it, guys. And because it's not okay for little children to be angry, in fact, it's not okay for little children to exhibit any kind of negative emotion, especially if it's kicking against the mores and the values and the norms of the caregivers. There's a lot of that suppression. It starts in our early childhood already. So your emotions are your warning system about when you are unsafe. When something is not in alignment with your authentic self, or when something is endangering you, what happens if you look at all animals in the wild, look at any kind of bird or mammal actually, so when they're in danger, what happens? So think of cats. Their hackles rise. They make themselves bigger. They puff themselves up. They show their fangs. Essentially, they have this behavior that is aggressive and warning, all right? So all animals do this, and this is our animal instincts. And humans, we're mammals, guys. We're animals. And so our alarm system is when our emotions, especially anger, is roused, right? It means that this is not something that is in alignment with who I think I am. This is something that might not be safe for me. This is not something that makes me feel safe. But when we are socialized from the time that we are little not to actually exhibit anger or aggressive behavior particularly, then what happens is we cut ourselves off from this instinct. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because in the first 3 years of your life, and I've said this to you guys so many times, you develop your beliefs about yourself, others, in the world. And those beliefs about yourself are never positive, really. Well, they can be, but a lot of them are negative, and they're limiting. So you believe that you develop a belief that you might not be worthy, for example, or you develop a belief that you're not good enough, or you develop a belief that you don't belong. And so your ego then convinces you that you have to compensate for those beliefs. No one is allowed to find out that the truth is that you're unworthy, or that you don't belong, or that you're not capable, or that you don't trust yourself. No one's allowed to know that. You have to cover that up. And so we develop these compensatory behaviors, these coping mechanisms, in order to get us accepted. So when we are little children, there are 2 fundamental needs that we have. One is to be accepted, and the other is to be our authentic selves. The problem is that our limiting beliefs develop, and they teach us that in order to be accepted, we have to cover up our limiting beliefs. And so we develop these coping strategies to keep us alive, so that we can be accepted and we can get bonded to an adult, so that they don't leave us, so that we die. And at the same time, we also learn that we have to support the values and the ethics and the whatever people think are right or wrong of the adults. We have to do what they do in order to be accepted. And in doing that, we lose touch with our authentic self. So we start wearing the masks of who we think we need to be, or we must be, or we ought to be, in order to be accepted. So we've got the coping strategy, that is a strategy that is covering up the truth of what we believe about ourselves. And then we lose our authenticity very often in the coping strategy, because we cannot be who we really are and be loved. And we all have a need to be loved for who we really are. And when we have to stop being our authentic selves, we cut ourselves off from our physical bodies, and we cut ourselves off from our instincts. And we no longer pick up inherently on what is dangerous to us and what isn't, because we get so socialized and habitualized into these coping strategies that we just think that that's normal. And so we say yes when we should be saying no. We compromise when we need to be standing up for ourselves. We settle for less than what we would love to have, because we don't think we deserve more than that. And the most common limiting belief is I'm unworthy. And the most common coping strategy for I'm unworthy is to be nice. And so nice people who put the needs of others above the needs of themselves are ones who are most susceptible to autoimmune disease. Now, that seems like it is unfair, right? Because good people shouldn't be punished. But here's the thing, disease is not a punishment. So I know that I called the title of this When Your Body Turns on You, but your body's not actually turning on you. Your immune system is malfunctioning because you're so emotionally dysregulated, you're so disconnected from your feelings, which are physical sensations in your body, because you're disconnected from your body, because that's what you needed to do in order to survive. So this is not your fault by any manner of means, that you don't recognize what is foreign and what isn't. You don't recognize what is a danger to you and what isn't. And so your immune system is mimicking that. It's mimicking the fact that the wires are crossed and that the signals are not coming through any longer. And as a consequence of that, you actually start developing the signs and symptoms. So it looks like your immune system is turning on you, but your immune system is trying to wake you up to the reality of what is actually going on. And so what ends up happening is we end up destroying ourselves. Now, the truth is, when you sacrifice what your limitless spirit is longing to express through you in this life, when you sacrifice that in order to be who you think you need or should or must or ought to be, in order to be accepted by your tribe or your culture or your parents or the world, then you turn on yourself. You're chucking yourself under the bus. And that's exactly what your immune system is reflecting back at you in an autoimmune disease. Now, medically, autoimmune diseases are treated by immunosuppressive drugs or biological therapy. I mean, I love the fact that they call it biological therapy because it sounds like it's so innocuous and organic, and it absolutely isn't. It's got flippin' horrendous side effects. And very often people can't tolerate some of those immunosuppressive drugs. They can't tolerate the biologicals. And sometimes the medication makes you almost as sick as the condition. But medically, the only hope we have is to drive these conditions into remission. For most people, it's a case of, well, you've got this. So let's say you get the thyroiditis, Graves' disease, overactive thyroid, radioactive thiodine kills your thyroid, and then you have to take thyroid medication for the rest of your life. You have to supplement thyroid hormones. If you've got Hashimoto's thyroiditis, underactive thyroid, well, they don't have to kill your thyroid because it's busy killing itself. So you still have to take the thyroid hormone. Now, I'm not saying that that's good or bad, and this is no judgment on anyone who's on thyroid medication, right? It's just an illustration for you of how medically these treatments are purely palliative. They cannot be curative. Now, for Hashimoto's or Graves', you can live an entire life taking thyroid supplementation without it affecting you too badly. But if you've got something like multiple sclerosis, for example, or you've got fibromyalgia that's incapacitating, or you've got rheumatoid arthritis that disfigures your joints to such an extent that you become immobile, and the best you can hope for is maybe to go into remission with hectic drugs that potentially give you hectic side effects, it's a pretty bleak picture. And that's because the Western medical model is not working on the premise that it's a message from your body. Anything that goes wrong in your body is something that needs to be cut out or suppressed or very often palliated. So we either ignore it, we push it down, or we remove it surgically if we can. So in the case of the thyroid example I just gave you, we don't remove it surgically. We take radioactive iodine, which gets absorbed by your thyroid and kills your thyroid gland off completely. So now it can't be overactive any longer, but it can't be normally active either. But it's okay because we've got thyroid hormone mimicking drugs. And those particular ones, the thyroid one, is the easiest one to manage. It's the only one that gets managed with any kind of, competency, right, medically. And so essentially when you've got an autoimmune disease, you get told that what you've got is uncurable. You've got to learn to live with it, and you've got to make the best of it. And you've got to tailor your life and all your expectations to the disease. And so what happens is we give the power to the disease. Now, I'm here to tell you that if you understand what the message is from your physical body, that it is your immune system turning on yourself, and you're brave enough to step into the truth of where are you doing that? Where have you been doing that? What are your limiting beliefs? What are the stories that underlie those beliefs about how you need to be in order to be accepted in the world? And when you see that that was all coping strategy, and it's essentially manufactured by you because you needed to do it in order to survive. No one does this consciously. It's all unconscious. When you make that unconscious conscious, then you can start making different choices, and then healing is possible. So I have had a client. I'm not working with her anymore at the moment, but she has an autoimmune disease called Addison's disease. And Addison's disease basically destroys your adrenal glands and you stop producing cortisol. So they've got to give you cortisone to supplement it because now your glands aren't making it any longer. And by the time she was my client, she had been to the dietitian, she was eating the right food, she had lost a lot of weight, she was doing the physical therapy, she was looking after herself much better, but she still had a lot of pain and she was on high doses of cortisone. And during the course of our work together, some of her symptoms improved significantly, but the most significant thing in this whole thing for me was her doctor started reducing her cortisone because for some other reason, her adrenals started producing cortisol again. Now, was she cured? Well, no. Not completely by the time we finished working together, but we only worked together for 12 weeks, all right? Is she continuing to work on herself? I believe she is. Do I believe that she can not only go into remission, but that she can probably actually reverse her disease to a large extent? I do. Now, can everybody? Well, I believe everyone has the potential to, and it might not work for everybody. But you know what? Even if only half the people with autoimmune disease who actually worked on uncovering their unconscious imbalances and the energy imbalances and sort of working on their suppressed emotions, the worst that could happen is they could have a better quality of life. The best that could happen is they could put their disease into remission. The very best that could happen is that they could heal. A sort of an in-between is that they could heal partially. Sometimes when you've been on a lot of medication, so if you've got something like Addison's disease where you've supplemented the hormone, or you've got one of the thyroid disorders and you've supplemented the thyroid gland hormone, you can't come off that medication, right? But what you can do is you can undo the mechanism. You can undo it by understanding it and working with it and creating health rather than trying to fix illness. And that will decrease your risk of having any more autoimmune diseases, because this is the thing. Your symptoms might be controlled by medication. You still have 4 times more risk of developing a second condition on top of the one that you currently have. So I'm here to tell you that if you do have an autoimmune disease, I truly believe that at the very least, you can significantly improve the quality of your life. You can push this disease into remission for sure. And I do believe that you can actually heal your life, right? But you have to be prepared to go to the places that you haven't gone before. Jung said that until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll control your life and you will call it fate. So I don't believe in fate when it comes to disease. I do believe that everyone has their own path. And I do believe that maybe the resolution of signs and symptoms is not for everyone. But I do believe this also, that your body is reflecting back at you what's going on in your unconscious, and it's sending you messages in order to help you integrate all the parts of yourself and in order to let you heal. So energetically, what happens here? Well, I think of your central nervous system, your endocrine system, and your immune system as the trinity in your body, right? They're like the head honchos, right? They're running the whole show. So your central nervous system is like the father. Your endocrine system is like the mother. She's flowing and she's feminine, and it's more, it's water and it's watery and it's emotional because your hormones affect your feelings, definitely. She's the mother. And the immune system is the child. So when the child is feeling suppressed, when the child is not allowed to be who they are, when children are forced into a box, when children are told that they need to be a certain way in order to be loved, some children become super compliant and some children say, fuck this, and they become super rebellious. And that's exactly what happens to your immune system when you are suppressing the authentic you and when you have had years of chronic suppression of emotions. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is for us to learn to reconnect to our physical bodies. The first step is to actually take what those symptoms are telling you and interpret them. Make the unconscious conscious. Uncover those limiting beliefs, right? Uncover how you've suppressed your emotions. Learn how to connect to your emotions and feel your emotions in healthy ways. There are loads of ways to do that. One of the best ways that I've found is somatic exercises. So let me talk about that right now. So go back to our animal nature, right? Before we've had all of this interference. when we experience an extreme emotion, like extreme anger or extreme fear, it is accompanied by movement in the body. So we either tremble, we shake, we run away, we fight, we scream, we wave our hands, we move. And the reason why we want to move is because when we have these intense emotions, like anger in particular, it releases a lot of cortisol and other stress hormones into your bloodstream, and the movement helps to eliminate those hormones. So what happens is when we suppress emotions, we don't feel them, we pretend they're not there, we put on our big girl or boy pants and we move on. We don't move either. So we've got all of that in here with no expression, no crying, no shouting, no screaming, no moving, no trembling. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I don't think vomiting all the reasons why you're angry all over other people and devastating them. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is in order to process intense emotions somatically, we need to move with that. So one technique of doing that is what they call the silent scream. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that because really I'm not doing this on a screen. But basically, you cover your hands on your mouth like this. You stand. And as you scream into your hands, you stamp your feet as hard as you can and wiggle your body. Because what you're doing is you're adding that extreme movement in with the expression, with the of getting that feeling it in your body and expressing it where it's not going to cause any harm, and moving and shaking at the same time. Another way of doing it is to lie on the floor and literally have a tantrum like a 3-year-old. Kick, scream, shout, stamp your feet, stamp your hands, give it horns, right? But don't okay, I'm not going to do it on the video as well, but like extreme, right? So those are somatic exercises that can help us access it. Now, there are other ways of doing it as well. There are much calmer ways. You can do it through your breath. You can do it through visualization. You can do it through a process that I call the feeling meditation that I teach all my clients and everyone that comes to any one of my programs. And if you're coming to the Healers U next week, I'll teach it to you there as well. So there are many ways, and you can choose the tools that work best for you. So another reason why this is so common in women is because women are hormonally susceptible at certain times of their lives. So pregnancy makes us, our hormones they're not volatile, but they are different, right? They're not in their normal steady state. And during menopause, our hormones, perimenopause into menopause, our hormones are also not in a steady human state. And very often autoimmune disease is triggered during one of those times, right? Either the lead up to menopause or during a pregnancy or soon after a pregnancy. Now, it's not always like that, but it can be. I believe that part of the reason why that happens is because we've medicalized a natural process like pregnancy. What we've done is we've told a woman, you know nothing. Hundreds of thousands of years of evolution and instinctive delivering of babies counts for fuck all. You need a doctor to monitor it because actually it's a medical condition. And because it's a medical condition and we all think it's a medical condition, we treat it like a medical condition, which is why very often it turns into a medical condition. Now, I also know that for hundreds of thousands of years and millennia, women have been dying in childbirth. Okay? I'm not completely like cuckoo, guys. I know that that's a reality. However, I also do know that the medical system is violent with pregnant women. Women get examined. They get fingers shoved up their vaginas to see how dilated their cervixes are. They get told not to scream too loudly. I've heard stories of women being shamed in labor wards because they're screaming too loudly through the pain and they're disturbing the other patients. That is not humane, my friends. That is also not allowing a woman to express the fullness of her experience. And let me not even get started on menopause because that's where I am right now. And, you know, when I have to, if I read one more time about how menopause is a disease of estrogen deficiency, it's not a disease, guys. It's not a medical condition. You're supposed to start producing less estrogen. You know why? Because what it does is it makes you less compliant. You increase your number of male hormones when you go through menopause. And because the estrogen comes down and the androgens go up, you are prepared to put up with less shit than what you did when you were younger. You are more feisty and you're difficult. And nobody likes that. So what do? We go, oh, it's a medical condition. So now we have to treat that. So no wonder we're pissed off. I don't even have an autoimmune disease and I'm fucking livid, all right? So these are just small examples of how women have to suppress their anger over and over and over and over. We have to look a certain way. We can't, there's this like big thing about, violence, gender-based violence against women. And, we have to be ashamed when we get raped. We have to not take on the rapist. People still say, well, what were you doing in that area? Or what were you wearing? All right. I mean, what the fuck difference does that make? Right. You're the one who was violated. Okay. So, I'm getting on my soapbox and I'm moving away from autoimmune disease. But can you see how often, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen to men. Please don't misunderstand me. Men also get autoimmune disease. And men also suffer from suppressed emotions. But they often have it in a different kind of form. All right. And I'm really sympathetic towards them also. So I'm not just saying, well, screw all men. It's all about chicks. It's just that I'm a woman and I have been a product of the system. And I know how much pressure I've been under to conform in my life. And I'm one of those women who supposedly has fewer fucks to give than many of my gentler, sweeter, more compliant friends. Because I'm unworthy as my limiting belief. I have a number of others, right? And so being nice is not really my chief coping strategy, but it's still one of my coping strategies. Because of course I want to be liked, and of course I want to be accepted, and of course I don't want to be rejected. So this is a problem of cutting ourselves off from our physical bodies, cutting ourselves off from our feelings, having to put up and shut up, constantly swallowing our anger. And as little children, and this applies to men and women, and this might apply slightly more to boys in this case, our feelings are not honored. You're not, when you cry because you're sad, an adult tries to cajole you out of it. If you're a boy and you're really unlucky, they tell you, cowboys don't cry, stop being such a sissy. If you're a girl, they say, don't be sad. There's no need to be sad, and then they distract you with a sweet or a kiss or whatever the case may be. We are not allowed to honor our feelings as children, because our feelings and that intense emotions of children, that makes adults feel uncomfortable, because those adults were once children who had all of that suppressed within them. And so autoimmune disease is a suppression. I had a teacher who said autoimmune disease is a covering of a lie. And I thought, that's quite harsh, like a lie. Does this mean these people that get autoimmune disease are all lying to themselves, right? And on some level, I think that's true. I think all disease is that. The lie is that it's okay for me to put everyone else's needs above my own. The lie is that if I don't put everyone's needs above my own, I will not be loved. The lie is that I'm not worthy of being loved when I am who I am. And so, yes, it is a lie. I had a patient once who had an autoimmune disease, and who had one before, and it went into remission with treatment. That's before I knew this stuff, right, about creating and this stuff that I'm talking about now, some of this, limiting belief stuff. I didn't know that stuff then. And then this patient suddenly, like after years, got a second autoimmune disease. And I kept on saying, this is associated with grief. Something is a cover-up. Something is a cover-up. Something's a cover-up. Never got it out of them. And only years later discovered that there was a massive thing happening in that patient's life that she was keeping from me and everyone else. And it was a literal lie that was being hidden. So it's often not a literal lie. So it can be something like, you're embezzling funds from your business. Please, anyone with an autoimmune disease, God, I'm not calling you an embezzler, okay? It can be a literal lie. But actually, very often, it's much more subtle than that. It's an unconscious lie. It's an unconscious lying to ourselves that it's okay for us not to feel and honor our feelings, that it's okay for us to have to suppress our needs and put our needs below the needs of everyone else. So that energetically is what's happening. And this is the other thing I wanted to tell you. So your lymphatic system, your lymph nodes, make your white blood cells, right? And in Jin Jitsu, that part of your body is associated with what we call the second depth. It's associated with all your connective tissue. Connective tissue is that tissue that binds things, like tendons and joints, and keeps your organs in place. And it's associated with the attitude of sadness and deep grief, because underneath the suppressed anger is the grief. So a little while ago, I think I did tell you guys the story, and I'm going to end now because I see this is going on a bit long. I discovered that a story underlying one of my, I'm not good enough. My limiting belief is that when I was little, I was told, my perception, that I'm too much, I was too clever, I was too tall, I was too big, I was too loud, I was too intense, I was too sensitive, I was too all of those things. And so I needed to make myself less than, because I was just too much. And what I learned was that if I am who I really am, I can't be loved. I'm not uncommon. But what was more significant for me is that when I am who I really am, not only can I not be loved, but no one wants to know me. No one wants to know that version of me, which means I'm going to end up this lonely, sad, embittered old lady. That's the story. It's not the truth. Once I've uncovered the story, I'm like, oh my God, it's a story. It's a story that I made up in order to justify why I had to give up my authenticity. And every single one of us has a story like that, my friends. Everybody, right? The difference might be that I've uncovered my story and you haven't yet, right? But we can all uncover those stories. And we can choose to step into the more authentic version of ourselves, despite the fact that it is cuck scary. Because your ego is going to give you all the reasons why that's a terrible idea. So here's the thing. You can either have the pain of the exploration, and at the end of that exploration, they're uncovering these unconscious agendas and connecting to what your soul is longing to be expressed, and be brave enough to step into what that looks like and have the freedom of living your life where it feels like it has meaning and you're inspired. Or we can have the security of never having to do that, but then we have to live with the pain of the symptoms. And that's the choice. It's a tough choice, which is why very often we have to be desperately ill before we start asking these questions. My call to you would be, don't wait until you're desperately ill, guys. Uncover the shit before you get sick, because you might still get sick, but if you get sick, you'll already know this, which means it'll be much easier for you to bounce back, okay? So that is what I have to say about autoimmune disease. I hope that you have found this interesting. What I want to do is I want to start hosting a masterclass every month, which is probably going to be 60 to 90 minutes on a topic. So maybe something like this autoimmune disease, where I'll go into it much more in depth in terms of what we can do. We'll do some exercises so that you actually have some tools and techniques. I am going to charge for this. I'm going to charge people that are not in South Africa $20, and people that live in South Africa, I'm going to charge 200 Rand. If anyone would be interested in a masterclass, like, you don't have to come to all of them. You just come to the ones that you are interested in. I'm going to host one every month. I'm thinking of like setting the topics like 6 months in advance so that you know which one's coming up when. If you would be interested in something like that, please just leave an emoji in the comments, or something like yes. Say yes in the comments, okay? Because then I'll know. Or type masterclass. How about that? Type masterclass in the comments. Because if there are like 10 people, then it's really worth my while to put it together. And I love sharing this stuff. And I want to be able to help people who perhaps can't afford to do one of my programs, can't afford to do a whole course, can't afford to do one-to-one coaching with me or anyone else, but need something. So if you'd be interested in something like that, please type masterclass in the comments. If you are watching live, please type live. If you're watching the replay, please type replay. And if you do have an autoimmune disease or any other disease that you are ready to shift in terms of starting to interpret what it really means and making the unconscious agenda behind that disease conscious, then the next Healer is You training is kicking off on Monday. It's on Monday the 27th. So you could join the training. It's going to be on Monday and Tuesday evenings. I'm going to give you the tools and techniques to uncover your limiting beliefs, to start uncovering some of these stories, and also how to connect to your spirit so that you can create the health that you would love. And it's going to be followed by the group coaching program. So you can do the training on its own. It's 1,850 Rand. Or you can sign up for the group coaching program, which is going to run over 6 weeks. We are going to have a break over Christmas, and we're going to pick it up again in January. So it's probably going to take about 8 weeks. And in that program, we're going to be taking the exercises more, we're going to be taking them deeper. We're going to be adding a couple of extra things, and we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers and sharing and having the support of a group. So if that floats your boat, then I would encourage you to sign up. Sign up for the Healers You training. If you love it, the cost of the training is included in the group program, right? To take it off the cost of the group program, so you haven't lost any money and you're not paying extra. I hope you guys have an amazing Tuesday. I will put the link to that training and the group coaching program in the comments. It's the same link. You'll see it's the same sales page. They're just 2 different buttons. You can click the one button to register just for the training, or you can click the second button to register for the training and the group coaching. I hope that made sense. Thank you so much for being here with me live. Thank you for watching Shit Loretta Knows. I hope you guys have an amazing Tuesday. And if you haven't yet, please sign up for the Healer Is You training. I will put the link in the comments as soon as this video is uploaded.